If you've ever tried to set up an IDE for Common Lisp, you know that it's a bit of a chore. You've probably installed Emacs, a Melpa repository, a Common Lisp implementation, set up your .emacs file, and install Sly or Slime, and then maybe you have, if all the stars align, a decent IDE to start with Common Lisp. Now, this is such a chore that it can put off, it can discourage people from even trying Common Lisp. So I was pretty excited when I heard the other day that there is a brand new IDE called Mine for Common Lisp. And so I decided to take a look at it, and then I also decided that, hey, I just kind of want to show the install process and a bit of the features. So just to start out with, mine actually comes in two different flavors. There is an all-in-one bundle that will just have everything that you need, including a essentially kind of a terminal for you, and that's for Windows and Mac OS. And then there's also Mine Core, which allows you to use your own terminal as long as it abides by the KDE keyboard protocol. Now, I happen to be running the KDE terminal normally, so this actually works out fairly conveniently for me. The website has a bunch of information about it. I'll try to link that down in the description so that way you can try it out. If you click download, it'll take you to the GitHub where you can download the version for your particular operating system and computer. I have already downloaded the Linux Mine Core and put it on my code. So I'm going to switch over to my terminal here, and I've got code here, and I'm just going to unzip the Mine package here, and then go into Mine and list this out. And you can see it just has the Mine executable and the README. And so all you have to do is put the Mine executable in a place where your path environment variable can see it. Now, I happen to have a little folder called bin on my user directory that I just use to place little executables in, and that way I don't need to use sudo or anything like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and that's all you need to do to install Mine. So let's go ahead and start Mine by just typing Mine, and it brings us to this welcome screen. Now, the first thing you probably want to do is run the wizard, which you can do at any time when you start running Mine. The welcome screen also has just a few things that you can control, keyboard shortcuts that you can do. It also has this menu bar at the top, which you can control with your mouse, and also your keyboard. You can always click on any one of these things. But what we're going to do is we're going to run the setup wizard to start. And so I'll just read through this just a little bit. So this is the Mine setup wizard, and it says, this short wizard will help you configure Mine. Your terminal will need true color support and a good Unicode font. Right? Do you want to enable structural editing? So structural editing allows you to edit Lisp-like code in a way where it's impossible to mismatch parentheses. This is more efficient editing preferred by This is the more efficient editing preferred by Lisp programmers. And you can toggle this at any time with Lisp P. So we're going to go ahead and choose that. Do you want to primarily develop in Colton or Common Lisp? So Colton is a library for Common Lisp that is essentially kind of a separate language, but it adds essentially Haskell-like type system to Common Lisp. And it's pretty neat, and it allows you, by using all of this type system, it allows you to create type correct code, as well as allows you to create very good optimizations. But I'm going to pick Common Lisp since that's what I'm used to right now, though you can switch this at any time, and it says you can switch it on the fly. Would you like Quick Lisp loaded automatically? Now, Quick Lisp is a package manager for Common Lisp. There's a couple of these out there, but Quick Lisp is the most popular one. So we're going to stick with that. Where do you want to keep your projects? So they put it in your home directory, but I'm just going to put it in code because that's where I like to keep all of my code. So I'm just going to go there, and keyboard, mouse, you decide. Mine is a 2E, but can be driven by both a keyboard and mouse. You can click menus, click and drag and highlight text, but you can also just use the keyboard. And so you can click F1 help to get a complete list of key bindings, right? And also for Mac OS, you can change the Option key to be the Alt key. And it says, now you're ready to work in the mines. You can always rerun this setup process. Please note this is software in development and has not been extensively battle tested. Save often and always make backups. Press any key, right? And so this will take us back to the starting page, which you will see anytime you start up Mine. And so one of the first things I want to look at is the help, which you can do with Control H, which has all the keyboard bindings. This is super useful because it has essentially everything that you would need to know to work with Mine. So it has all the normal key bindings that you need and this structural editing stuff, which we'll look at in a moment. So it has all of the normal key bindings that you would want for a file. So you can see Control C, X, V, Z, for cut, copy, paste, and undo. And then a lot of the other things you would need, Control S for save. Nice, very, very useful thing to do. So, right, and you can just hit escape to exit out of that at any time. The next thing that we'll do is we'll take a look at the structural lessons. These are really cool because it provides you essentially just a nice little tutorial introducing you to structural editing. I'm kind of new to structural editing, and so this is actually super nice. And I'm going to go through on my own. I'll go through and learn all of these lessons, but I did a couple just to see what it was like. So you can see like what it does is it gives you some nice explanations for these things and then gives you a goal of saying, hey, can you do this? And of course, the first thing you want to do is just open some parentheses, and you can see the structural editing will actually close the parentheses automatically for you, which is great. And so it'll tell you that it's correct and you can continue on. And what it'll do is it'll just give you some nice little exercises that allows you to learn this thing step by step, starting from the beginning. And then, of course, it will get more advanced as you go on to the lessons, right? You can say, oh, I've got this. I'm going to go to the next lesson. I'm going to go to the next lesson. And then you can say, hey, it wants you to try to empty some of these things. That's pretty nice. Go to the next lesson. Hey, can you empty this? Hey, that's great. And so this is just a very nice way of learning how to do structural editing, and it's just built into the IDE. Pretty nice. So I'm going to exit out of this. And we'll return back to the welcome screen. And the next thing that I want to look at is creating a project, because that's something that you're going to do a lot in the IDE. So I'm going to click Create Project, and it just wants you to give a name. I'm just going to call mine Test, and it'll say the language. I'm going to pick Common Lisp, and I'll click Create. And you can see that it creates this nice little template for a program. So just with kind of a hello world here. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see your open files, which is just kind of a bag of these open files. And then, of course, the project tree. And, of course, right now it's just very simple. It has the test directory and then this main.lisp file in there. Very nice. Also, if you click over here in the editor part, it will just expand the editor part so you can focus on editing instead of having to worry about this tree. And you can always open up the tree over here by clicking on it. So that's kind of nice over there. Now, the other thing that you'll want to work with is the REPL. So the REPL means the read eval print loop. And Lisp essentially invented the REPL. It is kind of the father of the REPL. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to interact with your code live, right? So you can edit, you can start writing your project, and then you have a REPL which has your project loaded into it. And so you can modify your project live, send those updates to the REPL, and then try them out, which is kind of nice. So I'll do a nice, I'll do kind of a small version of this to show you what it's like. So I'll show the REPL over here, and so you can see that it shows here at the bottom. And one of the first things that you'll want to do is the REPL is just a Common Lisp REPL, so you can write any Common Lisp expressions here. Oh, by the way, one of the things that you can do, I think this is probably because of my native terminal, but I can increase and decrease font sizes by using Control Shift and plus and minus. So I can increase the font size, decrease the font size. So that's kind of nice. I think it's because I'm running the Kitty terminal, and I think depending on your terminal, you can use different things. In fact, if I do Control H to bring up the help, I wonder if there is a listing for the font size. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. Evaluate. I don't see anything offhand for font size, so maybe it's just my terminal itself. But that if you're using the Kitty terminal, you can just change the font size very easily that way. So back to the REPL, we can write things. We can write an expression like +1, 2, 3. And you can see the REPL will say, hey, you entered this into the REPL, and here's the answer. So very nice. The other thing that you can do is you can send either forms, like just a single form, or you can send an entire file to the REPL itself. And so I'll show that here. So if you say editor here, it's called beaming in mine. So you can beam an entire file, or you can beam a form, and you can use Alt-K and Alt-C respectively for these things. So if I want to beam this form, I can do Alt-C. And that will, I think it wants you to put the cursor here. So if I do Alt-C, it will say, hey, this compiled. Very nice. So what we can do to use that function is we can type test, because that we're using the test package, : main, and that will run our hello function. Of course, we can write our own functions like defun square, and it will take an x and we'll say multiply x and x, and that will be our square. And of course, we can also do this. We can compile the whole file. We can say Control K or Alt K, and that will compile the entire file. Of course, if we put our cursor here, we could compile just the entire form. And now we should have access to square. So another interesting thing that you can do is if you hit Tab while you have something partially typed, it will actually show you all of the options that you have here. So I've already typed out test, and so by doing test : we can see all of the symbols that are inside the test package. Now, if I exported some symbols, then I would just do test : and then I could call a function. But since I haven't exported anything, I have to do : and you can see we've got square here. And notice here on the right-hand side, you can see that the signature for square is to just give it an X, right? If we had a more complicated thing, like let's say that we have format, right? You can see format requires a destination, control string, and then some possibly format arguments. So this is very nice. So it has all of the type signatures built into the system itself and allows us access to that thing. So let's go ahead and do test square and 3, and that gives us a 9. So we have a function that's great. Now, what if we want to do some live editing? So I've loaded the program in, but what if I want to change some part of the program and then just load that part while the system is running? I can do this. So I can do something like this, and we'll use our structural editing to move that part over, and then we'll say format T will print out, we'll say the square of this is this, and there we go. So we'll say X, there we go, and we'll save that, and we can send this to our thing. So, and then if you redefine a function, so it will give you a warning and say, hey, this function was already defined, just letting you know that there is a new definition for this function, square. And so now we can use this new definition, which, by the way, you can use your up and down arrows in the REPL to access previous forms that you've typed in. So we can run this, our previous form, and hit enter, and it'll say, hey, the square of 3 is 9. We can also change this, say 12. The square of 12 is 144. So that is just a nice way of working with the REPL. So you can imagine, you could even have a GUI system here where you're creating a graphical program, and while that graphical program is running, you could actually edit your program, make some bug fixes, beam that into the terminal, and then that would appear in your running program. A very nice way of working with Lisp, and it's one of the more unique ways of developing, and it's a very fast way of developing. So that is almost essentially all of the features. It's a very minimal IDE, and I actually like it that way. I kind of hope that it stays this nice, clean, minimal application. About the only thing that I would want from it is essentially an auto format method. So I would like to be able to say, hey, can you just reformat this file for me, or reformat a particular form? If I highlight this form, or maybe put my cursor here at the front of it, reformat all of the spacing there. That would be super nice. And I talked with Robert Smith, and he said that they have plans to add this in to the editor already, because there is another Common Lisp developer. I think his name is Itaro Fukumachi, and he has a project that already does that, and they're going to integrate it in to the IDE, which is very cool. So that if they do that, then that's basically everything I would want from a Common Lisp IDE. So yeah, that's essentially all I have for this. And I would say that now is a great time to get into Common Lisp, because it's never been easier. Like, this just makes it trivial. So if you ever want to try out Common Lisp, now is the time to do it. Oh, by the way, I'll go back here. A great resource for Common Lisp is the Common Lisp cookbook. And I believe it's here. And it has essentially everything that you would need. Well, I guess not everything, but it has a bunch of things, from getting started to all of the language basics. You can learn about variables here, and there's all sorts of things. This is a great resource for just getting started, or actually just a great reference for Common Lisp and using everything that you want. So there's certain things that are basics for if you just want to learn, and it has references to like other libraries that you can use. Very, very useful for Common Lisp. Maybe I'll make a video in the future just going over some of the basics, which would probably be nice. But that's about all I wanted to talk about for today. And so yeah, go and try out mine, and have a great day.